Good afternoon from Madrid. My name is David Henneberger. I'm the project director of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, the liberal German political foundation. From here, we are organizing our work in Italy, Spain, and Portugal, and also a Mediterranean dialogue program together with our officers and colleagues around the Mediterranean Sea, West Africa, and Turkey. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, security and the rule of law. The Real Instituto here in Spain has published a book on that issue last year, and my dear colleague Sebastian Vagt, who is now the project director in Morocco, and me had the honor to contribute with a chapter. Sonja Alda was from the Elcano Institute, was the editor of this book and had the idea. She was the mother of this project, if we can say so. And I'm also really happy that Andrea Rodriguez is today with us. She is a cybersecurity expert from the CDOP, the Center for International Affairs in Barcelona. And we're going to be talking about all of this. And very important, the book so far has only been published in Spanish. The link will be shown here in the bottom of the picture. But our chapter, Sebastian, will also be published in English on our homepage and under the following link. Sonia, maybe we can start with you. Nosotros vamos a hablar en español, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
Genial. Cuéntanos un poco por qué has tenido esa idea de editar ese libro, cuáles son las perspectivas, porque trabajas mucho en Latinoamérica también, ¿no? Donde los retos a la seguridad y los temas del Estado de Derecho son a veces diferentes y a veces las mismas, como aquí en Europa. ¿Cuál ha sido el fondo de tu proyecto?
Mira, en realidad estuvimos pensando en el alcance geográfico que podía tener el libro, fundamentalmente porque, como muy bien dices, mi área de trabajo es América Latina. La cuestión es que, considerando que estábamos hablando de un problema de seguridad y de nuevas amenazas, esas amenazas están afectando de manera global, como amenazas transnacionales, de manera que contemplamos la posibilidad de ampliar, ¿no?, toda aquella región y autores que estuvieran interesados en participar, puesto que padecen retos que son terrorismo, que es igualmente crimen organizado y que estamos todos en un mundo global, ¿no? Así que parece difícil, pese a las especificidades de cada área, pensar que puedes atar de forma al margen realidades que están afectadas por estas mismas amenazas, ¿no? De ahí que el libro trascendiera, aunque es donde el área que más se aborda, pero trascendiera el área latinoamericana.
Yeah, we really loved the invitation from Elcano to contribute to this book. Sebastian, when he was still the head of the Global Security Hub of the Foundation in Brussels, and me here in Madrid. Sebastian, you are connected live from Morocco, from Rabat, today. I mean, we wrote really a great chapter, don't you agree? Are the findings of our chapter, are they still valid? And what do they maybe mean in your new work environment? Does this also like apply for your work in Morocco, what we wrote about Europe and the danger, the imminent danger of Vladimir Putin, Russia, and so on, to the security situation in Europe?
Well, thanks a lot for having me, David, and thanks a lot to Sonja for this great opportunity. Actually, I'm also still proud to have contributed, and now it's a while ago that we wrote the chapter, and as always, if you write something, then if you revisit what you've written later on, you can get impressed or surprised by yourself what you've written. So now I feel more like a reader than an author. I think one of our main findings was that there are risks to the rule of law in Europe, and those risks are being increased by symptoms of conflict, crisis, and authoritarian rule around Europe. And are those findings still valid? Yes, I would say they are even more valid now, since we're now facing a global pandemic. And this global pandemic is actually accentuating and accelerating some of the problems that we found in our chapter already a year ago. For example, there are now so many people who are not believing in facts and in science. There's people who are questioning the very fact that the virus exists, where it comes from, how dangerous it is, if a vaccine is a proper cure to it. So we're seeing this at a much larger scale now. And this, I think, is a problem and a risk to the rule of law. And we cannot just say that all those people who are refusing to get vaccinated, who may be admiring authoritarian systems like Dubai or Russia, they're not all idiots. We have to accept the fact that they don't trust our institutions anymore, and we have to find a cure for that.
Thank you, Sebastian. Andrea, what do you think in the last year, are the cyber threats more imminent than a year ago? I think like Europe was very naive for a few years now, but in recent times, my personal impression is that Europe has stepped up their game. Also NATO, they have invested more in cybersecurity. Do you think we are better protected now from cyber threats than maybe a year or two ago?
I think that we are better coordinated when responding to cyber threats. That doesn't mean that we are a more resilient continent, that we are a more resilient region, but I think that the pandemic has in fact accelerated the digitalization trend and therefore exposed even more societies and businesses and countries alike. We have seen, as Sebastian has said before, that the disinformation pandemic, it's another thing affecting us greatly, from people believing in conspiracy theories, and not only those people who belong to a niche of society who are like very underground, people who are those people who put this like paper hat on their heads, just believing in things that are like not the mainstream.
Sonia, creo que una tendencia global en los últimos años ha sido que los conflictos y las guerras también son cada vez más asimétricos, ¿no? Asimétricos. Yo creo que eso causa retos especiales para los cuerpos de seguridad en todos lados, ¿no? Lo vemos en la región cerca de Sebastián, en el Sahel, lo vemos en Europa con el peligro del terrorismo también, y obviamente lo vemos también en Latinoamérica mucho, donde los cárteles realmente en muchos países tienen una fuerza ya que es inimaginable. ¿Cómo ves los estados en Latinoamérica? ¿Realmente están preparados para afrontarse a este nuevo reto? Porque no es una guerra clásica. Los sistemas de información que usan los cárteles, por ejemplo, son diferentes, trabajan a veces casi más como una empresa privada, ¿no? ¿Cuál es la respuesta? ¿El Estado es capaz de...?
Bueno, yo me pregunto, y un poco en relación a lo que comentaba antes, ¿no? Me pregunto si el reto únicamente lo tiene América Latina. América Latina tiene un reto aún mayor quizás, porque sus estados son mucho más débiles y porque la amenaza es potentísima, como acabas de decir, ¿no? Con lo cual eso está generando pues que el reto sea muchísimo mayor por ambas partes. Ahora bien, estaba pensando hasta qué punto no tienen el reto Europa y lo tiene Estados Unidos y lo tiene la adecuación de las fuerzas estatales en relación a la amenaza que tenemos, ¿no? O sea, nosotros tenemos fuerzas que están adecuadas a unas amenazas que en principio seguirían existiendo, que son las convencionales, las tradicionales. Y en ese sentido es interesante pensar si son esas fuerzas las que siguen valiendo. ¿No? Es decir, no hay amenazas externas de un ejército convencional, y nosotros y todos los países nacionales y todos los estados latinoamericanos tienen ejércitos en desuso en relación a esa amenaza. Y en el caso de América Latina, contemplando la potencialidad de esa amenaza, están teniendo que emplear fuerzas como las militares en amenazas que no se corresponden a las características de esas fuerzas, ¿no? La tendencia en Europa, por supuestísimo, no es... Hay una tendencia, pero no es esa misma solución, pero la tendencia es ir implicando cada vez más a las Fuerzas Armadas en cuestiones internas. Y siguen estando entrenadas para otro tipo de cosas. Con lo cual yo creo que el reto es el reto de los Estados-nación. Sean más sólidos, con más capacidades, con más recursos, pero no deja de ser un reto para todos, ¿no? Y es adecuar las fuerzas a las amenazas. La tragedia es que nosotros estamos en un mundo en transición. Nadie se quiere deshacer de los estados para que no haya, por si acaso alguien te ataca, y además esto sería una auténtica conmoción para toda la ciudadanía, pero también queremos protección para estas nuevas amenazas, ¿no? Y esto, bueno, es un esfuerzo que la mayoría de los estados no pueden afrontar, ¿no? Tener fuerzas para tan distintos tipos de amenazas.
¿Y cuál es la situación en estas situaciones de los derechos humanos, o más bien del Estado de Derecho, en el sentido de que en una guerra clásica, por ejemplo, ¿no? hay reglas, hay atrocidades horribles en cada guerra, sabemos eso, pero hay reglas del juego, para decirlo así, ¿no? Eso en una guerra asimétrica no aplica. Entonces, tú ves bueno, las atrocidades que cometen los cárteles son inimaginables. Pero también supongo que a veces las fuerzas de seguridad, cuando supuestamente atacan un cartel, ¿no? Tampoco aplican las mismas reglas que en una guerra tradicional. Hay más también violaciones de derechos humanos, por ejemplo, en las acciones del Estado cuando se trata de un conflicto asimétrico.
Bueno, yo hablaría de algo inicialmente, ¿no? Y es que hasta ahora las situaciones de abusos y violación de derechos humanos, por ejemplo en el caso de América Latina, pero en todos los casos de cualquier área del mundo, se cometían por los estados en situaciones de dictadura, ¿no? Y me estoy remitiendo, por ejemplo, a la Guerra Fría, que tampoco está tan lejos temporalmente, vaya, estamos aquí al lado. En este caso, y en el caso, como decía, que tiene esa potencialidad, el crimen organizado en América Latina, estos actores son y no los estados, en principio, los principales violadores de los derechos más básicos, como es el de la movilidad. La ciudadanía latinoamericana vive secuestrada en sus casas, en sus clubs, en sus colegios, ¿no? Aterrados, pensando todo el día que van a ser asaltados, secuestrados, extorsionados, y no es el Estado en este caso quien está generando esa amenaza. Si además, contestando a lo que tú dices, pues como muy bien planteas, esto no es un problema de perseguir ni ladrones, que haría la policía, ni ejércitos, ¿no? Y aquí está este espacio en el que la inteligencia criminal y toda la tecnología es absolutamente imprescindible, y no todos los estados tienen esos medios. Hay estados que están utilizando la inteligencia militar para perseguir al crimen organizado, y la inteligencia militar no tiene nada que ver con la inteligencia necesaria para el crimen organizado. Se está utilizando, insisto, a militares para labores que casi se acercan más a las policiales, aunque requieren de otro tipo de perfil. Y en realidad esto puede acabar generando violaciones de derechos humanos, por supuesto.
Sebastian, we were just hearing about technology and the fight of criminal groups and asymmetric wars. This also plays a role, I assume, in EU-Moroccan relations. As I said before, you were the coordinator, the head of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation Security Hub in Brussels. You're a military expert yourself, and now you went to Morocco to lead our project there. And traditionally, EU-Moroccan relations are regarded as excellent. There's a lot of cooperation on many fields. Morocco is a donor starting. Morocco receives quite a considerable amount of money to stop illegal migration to Europe. I think it was 140 million euros by the European Union, and another 30 million euros by the Spanish government recently.
From Europe, we like to see Morocco as an origin of migration, for example, but it is as well a migration destination, a transit country for migration. It has been a victim of terrorist attacks in the past. It is affected by drugging and other symptoms of crisis and instability in the region. So there's a lot of potential for collaboration, and I think there is also quite a lot of evidence that this connection between Spain and Morocco, for example, has already helped prevent some terrorist attacks and other problems. I think that this could be an interesting cooperation avenue for many countries. And I think by asking countries like Morocco to prevent people from leaving the country, we're doing the harm that's being done to the principle of human rights is larger than the harm that migration to Europe does on the long run. So I think we should make a distinction here between things like terrorism and drug trafficking and migration on the other hand. That's a problem that needs to be dealt with different strategies.
Andrea, do we as Europeans, as European citizens, know enough what's going on in the Mediterranean, also when it comes to technology and all the different missions? It's very difficult even for a politically interested person to follow all the security missions and initiatives and just think of Frontex and the EU and NATO missions in the Mediterranean. Do we know enough? Is the European public informed well enough what's going on in our neighborhood?
I think not, and that's a pity for many reasons. The MENA region is our direct neighbor, so whatever happens to them affects us. So not that long ago, President Macron said that we need to be more aware of what happens there, because if something fails in those regimes, in those countries, we are going to be next. And he was referring to jihadist terrorism there. But we can apply that same lesson to many other directions. So for instance, with technology, I think that we have the opportunity to uphold human rights, to spread European values in the region by trying to create consensus and cooperation in the implementation of new technologies. So I know that there is like a lot of cooperation between European cities and Mediterranean cities, but from the other side of the Mediterranean Sea, of course, because I'm from a think tank that is based in Barcelona. Barcelona is a very Mediterranean city, but is obviously not the same as Tunis, for example, right? So there is some cooperation there, but I think that there is like a general sensation of that region being so foreign to us, especially maybe to countries that are not Mediterranean countries and European countries at the same time. I think that from someone who's living in Sweden, whatever happens in Morocco might be something that they might be interested in, but they don't see that as something directly affecting their security and directly affecting like their rights and liberty and so on and so forth. So with regards of technology, yes, we have some cooperation from the city to city side. Yes, we have some exchanges, but we need to be aware that we are not the only actors trying to get the attention of those countries, and we are not the only actors trying to create that cooperation in technology. Technology is something that is affecting our lives in so many levels, and it's going to help create the conflicts of the present, because we're already seeing them, but also of the future. We are seeing societies that are like more monitorized than ever because of so many digital technologies affecting our lives. Facial recognition, for example, in the issue of migration, as the means to identify the person who's coming to us. Or, for example, other artificial intelligence technologies, such as to recognize the accent of the people who's coming, as to identify the place that person is from. So we are having that thing applied to our everyday security issues. Why don't we collaborate more, right? I think that's the next thing we have to do, like identify those places and try to use them not only as the means to achieve a greater level of security for us, but also as a means to safeguard definitely our values and to create an area of prosperity, basically.
Yeah, and often we are creating security threats ourselves, no? I mean, this is also true maybe for our drug policy. I mean, there is a theory, that Latin American drug cartels actually finance jihadist groups who bring illegal drugs to Europe. If you made certain things legal, maybe we wouldn't have certain security threats. Do you think we do enough in our homelands, like to try to tackle security issues like drug crime, for instance, drug-related crimes, in our home countries?
La verdad es que te digo algo, estaba intentando relacionar tu pregunta con lo que, Andrea, ¿verdad?, estabas planteando. Y me parece súper interesante ambas cosas. Estaba pensando, antes, si me permites, en lo que planteaba Andrea de la utilidad de la tecnología, ¿no? Antes estábamos hablando nosotros y yo decía, es el tema para las actividades ilegales.
Andrea, you're also very much focused on strategic autonomy, European strategic autonomy. Sorry. What do we need to do better? I sometimes think, I think that Europe isn't really facing the geopolitical discussion yet, especially its citizens. No, it's like even in the German industry, there's quite some resistance towards the idea of European champions, no, who can like compete with Chinese and American companies who are also partly funded with really big state money. What do we need to do also? What do we need to do better, not just as officials or politicians or people working in the political sphere, but also as civil society? What do we need to do better?
We have some urgent tasks. The first one is to avoid civil-military fusion, which is a strategy that China uses to acquire technology that is like developed outside of China. So that happens everywhere in the world. So right now, 48% of the startups receive Chinese money at some point. So we need to protect our talent, of course, as he said before. But because talent and education come hand in hand, that's for sure. But that also, I mean, we also need opportunities. And we are seeing that like, for example, the southern part of Europe is lacking some opportunities for like young people. It is lacking opportunities for like new companies to flourish, which is something that actually happens in other places. So that's the most urgent task for us, like protect our technology and protect our startups and protect our entrepreneurial system. That's number one. Second of all, to guarantee this strategic autonomy long term. I'm speaking from the digital point of view because I'm sure that there's like many other experts who will know more about other dimensions of strategic autonomy. But in here, we also need to invest with a forward-looking view in new technologies. That means we cannot be always regulating something that has happened, that has been developed far away from Europe. Meaning, right now we're having a big discussion on how to regulate artificial intelligence. That's all right, that's fine. However, the biggest AI firms, none of them are European. When we had this huge discussion about 5G, we were having a discussion about Chinese firms investing in Europe because we don't have big 5G European players. We do have Ericsson and Nokia, that's for sure, but they understood long ago that their biggest markets is not European market. Ericsson is like largely focused in the US, for example. And Nokia is trying to catch up, yes, but we need to empower those businesses and try to create an ecosystem so more companies happen and pop up, right? So we don't have this discussion again in 20 years when we are speaking about 6G, which is something that it's been already considered basically because 6G will have, or it's expected to have like large military applications. So we are thinking in 6G, for example, in NATO, we are thinking in 6G in the militaries, but we are not really creating an ecosystem for 6G to happen in a European way. The same, we could like go on and on with like other technologies, just like quantum computing and so on and so forth. So that's the second urgent thing we must do, invest in something that is gonna give us profit, not now, but in 10 years or in 15 years. So we don't have to go out and purchase that technology, and then we will have again that same discussion of foreign interference in Europe, so on and so forth. And as from the societal point of view, what we can do and what we must do is request those things. We need to have the strategic autonomy to enter the debate. Because if we as citizens are not aware of the danger that poses in terms of like our own freedom, right? We are not going to demand that to our politicians. And they're not going to make this like long-term commitments that they're needed to support this idea. Because you cannot create strategic autonomy in a 4-year term. You need that to go on and invest money for that. And you need to be ready to take the profit in 20 years' time, maybe when your political party is not ruling.
That is absolutely true. Yeah. That is like constructing or planning a new subway line.
Indeed.
Because you will never be able to cut the ribbon. It's going to be your successor in like 10 years. So it's not very attractive, and you build just tram lines, let's say. Sonia, algunas ideas para terminar este debate sobre ese asunto. Somos muy arrogantes como europeos debido a nuestros éxitos en el pasado.
Sí, lo que pasa es que no se puede, uno siempre tiene que combatir la arrogancia, siempre, no es sana, ¿no? Ni siquiera para progresar más, porque nubla los sentidos y no te deja ver. Pero si encima es porque lo fuimos y no porque lo somos, es aún peor esa arrogancia, ¿no? Estoy muy de acuerdo con lo dicho, y definitivamente yo creo que tenemos que empezar a tomar, a pisar la tierra, ¿no? A darnos cuenta realmente y a pretender no a llevar a cabo renuncias, sino que lo que queremos no podamos seguir viviendo de un pasado reciente glorioso, sino darnos cuenta de que este es otro mundo distinto, que si queremos, y yo creo que ese es un valor extraordinario que tiene Europa en el Estado de Derecho, no cabe duda que para poder seguir exportándolo como modelo ideal y el modelo europeo hay que generar muchos cambios, ¿no? Y la inversión en el talento y la inversión en la tecnología creo que es una cuestión muy, muy importante y en la que desde luego definitivamente tenemos que concentrarnos mucho, aunque requieran de inversiones a largo plazo, ¿no? Pero creo que es que no podemos pasar por ahí, no podemos seguir viviendo de lo que fuimos, ¿no? Y encima querer ser arrogantes.
Yeah. Andrea?
So for me, I think that we need to understand that we are not going to be a superpower anymore. And that probably takes a lot of self-reflection and a lot of disappointment, because everyone wants to be a superpower, and when you're European and you're like raised in this like tales and histories of empires and values and this and that, acknowledging that maybe you will not be a superpower in the 22nd century, it's a very hard decision to take. So I think that instead of trying to become a superpower again in any dimension, we can be a regulatory superpower. We need to try to achieve that level in being a successful middle power. And for that, we need to understand what a middle power is. And we need to create a strategy that really defines our limitations and our opportunities. We need to find the gaps in which we can be useful, not only for Europeans, but also for the world, right? So if we're really okay in our lifestyle, if we have created a very like glorious lifestyle in Europe, maybe that's a niche, right? Maybe we should try to work on that and try to uphold that at home and try to export that. And while we're doing that, maybe we can try to foster cooperation. So I think that that Europe can be an empire by example, which is not a phrase of mine. It's from an Oxford professor called like Jan Zielonka. He's a Polish-British professor. So, but I think he got it right, and he wrote this in 2008. Europe must acknowledge its middle power status, and it should try to lead by example.
Absolutely, and the more of our neighbors, our close neighbors, we involve in our decision-making processes and in our cooperation, the better and the more we grow. Sebastian, thank you so much for having participated today. I hope to see you really soon. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend in Rabat, which is much closer from Madrid than my hometown, our common hometown, Hamburg. And I think I can speak for the both of us. We can feel very honored to have enjoyed this afternoon with Sonia and Andrea from CDOP and Elcano, the two most prestigious Spanish think tanks who deal with foreign policy issues. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Sonia. And thank you, Sebastian. Have a great afternoon and follow us on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you. Bye-bye.